I see.
Yeah.
All right. So just name the introduction first.
Say that again.
Your name, just your name.
Oh, Valerie Teberge.
Okay, cool. And then I'm just Rocio. But anyways, I wanted to talk to you today about just like being a full-time mosaic artist and just how you got there, how you got interested. Let's just start there.
Mhm.
How did you get interested in being a full-time artist?
So yeah, I mean, I would qualify that I don't consider myself a mosaic artist. I just like to say artist and mostly sculptor, because I think the medium is secondary. It's not my favorite part of it.
Okay.
So, well, went to art school as an undergraduate and studied painting and drawing, and and then right away I moved to China for a couple of years, and then moved to Hong Kong, and I was trying to find my way because the fine arts degree doesn't have any um, practical, it wasn't like graphics or commercial, it was just fine arts. So I was sort of bopping around to jobs, and I ended up doing a master's degree in Hong Kong. And when I was doing that, I saw somebody was looking for an apprentice in the arts. So it was the first time I was able to go back after graduating college, like when I was in my late 20s, and um, get a job in the arts. And so I apprenticed with this British company that were doing commercial murals, like mosaics. And so I worked for them for 2 years and really learned all the techniques and the the craft of it. And then I moved back home to the States and tried to figure out where my voice was in all of it, or how could I articulate who I was. Once I'd learned the techniques, how could I sort of articulate? And so then that's what I did. Slowly but surely, I built myself up over the last 20 years. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Like, you mentioning like you starting from you said like from fine arts institute in San Francisco, right? And then like
Mhm.
you kind of realizing like, okay, like this is awesome. Like maybe I love the arts. I love to do like the creative things, but not necessarily knowing like what medium was going to be like a practical, like, to make like maybe a living. I think a lot of people struggle with that, like especially if you're a creative person. So I think that's like a really interesting kind of a route. And like you said, it took you time. How was the apprenticeship? Was it in Asia? The entire
yeah, it was in Hong Kong.
Hong
They had a office in Hong Kong, and we would do like large scale murals for restaurants or the government or whatever. We did like large scale things. So um and I would say, just to back it up, the 6 years that I was sort of working office jobs while I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, those are really essential skills for what I do now. So I feel like that's such a half of it, is being able to show up and do the business side of it, in addition to the creative side, is like there it's shouldn't go unnoted that you need to have follow through and like a professionalism, something like that. So
Okay, that's really interesting to note because like I don't know if you can relate to this, but like office jobs can feel awful when you're a natural creative. They can literally
yeah,
feel like death. Like you're just
yeah.
like, I hate this. I hate everything about this. you know?
I felt like, not to be melodramatic, but I really felt like I was dying. Like my whole soul was dying. And I felt out of step the entire time. Like, I know I've got something in me, and like this is not it. And so but this is in hindsight. I have the luxury of 20 years later, when, but yeah, at the time I 100% felt like soul crushing. So
I think that's a kind of a unique experience for artists or creatives or entrepreneurs is like you realize in those moments you're like, first of all, like I hate this. Second of all, this is awful. third of all, you kind of realize, and this is bad, but like you kind of realize the inefficiency of most office jobs too. And you're
Mhm.
kind of like, I can do most of this maybe like in a few hours or 30, whatever, right? Because
Yeah.
I think the creative mind, it does it in flux. Like, so like when you're doing things, you don't necessarily like do it all day, but you'll like get like I don't know, like a burst of
Yeah.
energy, and then you do it all at once. And then so you're kind of like, okay, like you don't need to spend but yeah, it's like a unique experience, and you are right, half the job is showing up, but showing up is hard. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but I mean, also me being a professional artist
mhm,
and doing it full time, half of that is being able to have the skills that I learned in those settings, which are much more linear. But I need those linear, skills like how to write letters and how to follow through and, all of those things. It's important for me to balance the two. Um, and so in hindsight, I have a lot of appreciation for all that I learned there. Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah.
I'm like, I hope that.
It'll happen now.
I'm like, I don't know. I'm like,
Yeah.
um, yeah, that's good. That's good. So you were kind of so you got out of school, you worked for 5, 6 years, trying to figure out your way. And then you decided to take this apprenticeship. Can you tell us a little? You said you were doing like different things for like banks, but can you tell us about like the experience of an apprenticeship? Because a lot of people, they don't know what that is, or
Yeah.
they know what that is, but they don't know what that looks like in the 21st century, so to speak.
Right. Well, it was pretty relaxed. And in fact, I've had apprentices with me for 4 or 5 years that are now kind of blossoming out on their own, which is kind of cool. But yeah, so I mean, it was a job, but because I didn't know anything, they were training me along the way. And because I had a background in arts, then I had like, value for it. But it was very laid back. I mean, I was working serious office jobs before where you had to be super buttoned up. And then and so moving to this where you'd sort of show up and you're like tactile and working, so yeah, well, I mean, they just taught me the mechanics of it and the skill sets on how to uh cut, how to make lines, how to move, because it's a very hard, unforgiving medium and you're trying to make fluid things out of very static, hard, pieces of glass. So I just trained and learned and trained and learned, but yeah. And I should add in there part of, I think my dog wants to go out. Part of um is I did The Artist's Way. Have you ever heard of that book?
I have heard. I haven't read it. I've heard of it. I've heard of it. I've heard
That that needs to be added in there because that really just changed my life. And I did it methodically the entire thing. And so I guess this is a bigger part of the story was that it's 12 chapters. They say 12 weeks. I took 6 months because it's really a lot of work. And I answered every question, did everything, very carefully, combed through it. And while I was doing it, so this is kind of, I think the bigger thing is before I started doing it, I saw this little sign up at this art gallery, like we're looking for a mosaic apprentice. And in my mind was like, oh no, they would never hire me. Okay. Then I started doing The Artist's Way, which is essentially trains you to listen and not negate all those little messages you're getting every day. Like, try this, try this, try this. And, that may not be that's just a baby opening to another opening to another, And so then in the middle of The Artist's Way, 3 months later, I saw the same sign up there. And this time I heard the little voice because I was been trained by The Artist's Way, like listen to those voices. And it just call. And I called. And if I hadn't had that, like, you know, being taught through The Artist's Way of just like listening to your inner voice, and we're creative and that's what we're supposed to be doing, that's our whole purpose, then I wouldn't have called and then gotten the opportunity. And then my whole life, 20 years later, I'm sitting here doing this, right? So I think more than me just, living in Hong Kong, and it's like really training myself to listen to the inner world, which is constantly guiding me along the way. So I would say that was a huge part of it. And I meditate every day, and that's a huge part of my creative life. So, yeah.
I think that's a huge aspect of like what you're talking about, the spirituality behind whatever you're doing. And I think a lot of people think of spirituality as really rigid all the time, and it can be a hygienic practice, like what you're saying, like the meditation daily. But I do also think it's interesting that whenever you talk to a creative person, like you also are talking about somebody that has tapped into something that they're like, okay, I feel more in tune with what I want, but like I'm not fighting against this like natural feeling that I'm feeling I
Mm.
want to do. And so I think it's always super interesting talking to creative people because often I think you divorce naturally spirituality and creativity a lot of times. In your mind, at least, you're always like, creatives are always like, I think, grouped into people that maybe don't have a system that they follow. So I think that's true. Is like, I want to read that book. I'm going to read that book. I'll put it in my Amazon cart, so I'll read
Oh,
it.
okay. Okay, good. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited. There's another book that I was thinking, The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. I've never read it, but I've always
Oh,
heard about
I've given that book to like 3 people.
it.
No, 3 or 4 people. That book is like by my bed, and I've had it for 4 months, and I've only gotten halfway through because it's like just 2 pages, super deep. He speaks my language. Like, I think that is such a profound book, and he articulates things that I understand that I haven't necessarily, because I'm visual, like I want to show you like, oh, it doesn't, but he's very articulate about the process, and that it's just flowing through us, and we just have to be tuned in. That's why I think the meditation or some kind of discipline where you're turning this off and connecting to a deeper like that we're just one thing he said that struck me recently in one of the chapters I've been reading, it's like it's already right there. If I'm not tuned in to receive it, then that person is gonna, you know what I mean? It's already at, like, it's like the creative momentum or where we're moving is already there. And so it's just, but I want to be super tuned in so that I'm the receptor. So anyway,
No,
it's
no,
such a good book. Such a good book.
I agree with that. I think that's totally true. And I think he talks about too, like when you don't receive that, and then like you had that idea, and then later that another person takes it, you're like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you get kind of mad. But he talks about that. It's like what you're saying, but you and the act, like it didn't meet. Like you
Yeah.
needed to like do it, and then because you didn't do it, like, well, someone else is going to do it. Like that makes
Yeah.
sense. It is not of you, but through you, and that's like a
Right.
really tough thing sometimes too.
That, and that there's just 50 million of them. So you miss that one. That's why I think staying like acutely tuned,
Yeah,
the next and the next and the next, they're always there. Because like you look at like life force running through like a garden, it's just like it's never ending vitality, right?
that's
So
that's I think that's important too, is like remembering that it, like, there's like these two words that come to me, and it's like the scarcity versus abundance mindset. But it's like really, most people, they think in scarcity, but once you move to abundance, it is hard, especially if you were trained think in scarcity, to stay in that mind of like, okay, just because I haven't done it yet doesn't mean that I won't, or just because, yeah, someone took that idea doesn't mean another won't come through me, or just because
mhm.
that piece of art I wasn't really proud of doesn't mean that the next piece isn't going to be like something I'm extremely happy about.
Yeah.
So that's kind of
And the
hard.
middle one is part of getting to the next too, like the even if it didn't like sync up, that one will lead to something else, you know?
That's true. That's hard though to think about when you're going through that process. It can be frustrating. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, that one turned out like crap, you know. But I did do a really good art piece maybe like 3 months ago or 6 months ago or a year ago. Like, how do I get back to that? You know, and it can feel like a strange like I know I can do it. Why isn't it turning out? You know, and so yeah, that's pretty difficult sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But all right, so you okay. I guess how did you so you were in Hong Kong, you did your apprenticeship, it was pretty relaxed. You did it under someone, I'm assuming.
I
Um,
worked with two people who ran the company. They were both like British nationals living, because at that time, Hong Kong was British territory.
oh, okay,
Before
okay.
it had gone back to China.
Yeah.
So yeah, and so I worked for them, and they trained me, and you know, just was like their third, the third in the group. Yeah,
How did you find, I guess, are you from the States originally or are you from
yeah. I grew up, yeah, here.
how did you find the courage to leave and go to Hong Kong? I guess.
Oh, um, you know, as soon as I graduated from the Art Institute in San Francisco, I just wanted to get as far away as possible. So, I mean, from DC moving to San Francisco was about as far away as I could get from culturally and geographically in the States. And
Yeah.
then, you know, and then where can I go even further? So I was an intrepid wanderer and traveler, you know, for 20 years. I mean, I took a year off before I came back and just backpacked for a year all throughout like Tibet and Nepal and India. And, you know, like, so, I mean, I just had wandered less. So I was like, where can I go? And, you know, probably couldn't have been any more different, really, like, than anything I'd ever experienced. It like blew my mind. And even before I landed, you know, on the plane, I just knew that that was it, you know. And I mean, I stayed for 2 years in China. I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a feeling, I agree, where you just know. And you know when you're in the wrong space too, if that makes sense, when you're just like, I'm out of
Yeah.
sync here. I don't feel whatever it is, you know, but you
Hmm.
know it. I agree. Especially
Yeah.
when it's right. You're like, okay, you feel energy, you feel inspired, you feel
Yeah.
like, you know, and it's different for everyone where that is, you know, for
Yeah.
different people. Like some people hate New York, some people love New York, some people hate LA, some people love LA. A lot of those places are pretty polarizing.
Yeah.
I think for good reason because we're made differently, you know. So
Yeah.
it's like your personality and what you want and what your values, what you're searching for, what part of your life you're in is so
Right.
different, and that's awesome. I've never been to Hong Kong, but
Uh-huh.
I have I would love to visit one day and just like I don't know if I would be there for a while, but like just to visit and like experience it and like the
Right.
markets and stuff and just different
Yeah.
people, different cultures, different values.
Yeah.
So then after Great Britain, or sorry,
Hmm.
after Hong Kong,
Hmm.
then you went back to DC or you
Right. I like took a year and kind of traveled on my way. I was trying to travel overland all the way back, but I got stuck and couldn't get to Iran. So I had to like, yeah, because as an American citizen, you can't travel alone, you know. You have
oh
to
I
travel
didn't know
in a group. Yeah. Understandably, we don't have great relations. So, you know, I would have probably been considered like a spy or something like that. So anyway, so I traveled a year and then came back to DC. And yeah,
so you
and
were working oh sorry go ahead.
no, that's it. Yeah.
So you were working full time and doing artistry, like your apprenticeship full time too. So you were doing like regular day job, and then you would kind of do your artistry at night, or like
Back here, when I moved back here.
just in Hong Kong. Was it
Oh no, in Hong Kong, the last 2 years was full time doing this.
okay?
Yeah, full time doing that job, and then I was getting a master's degree, so like I was going to
Oh,
school and stuff
oh,
like that.
I see what you're
Yeah.
saying. Can I ask what you got your master's degree in? you don't mind me
Yeah, I got it in comparative Asian studies. And so I looked at the migration system, the internal migration system in China, from rural to urban migration. But it was just a general survey of the history from colonialism to present time in Asia. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. That's
Yeah.
like so interesting. So you went to Hong Kong to study, but then in your heart
No,
you also
I went to Hong Kong because after 2 years in China, I was slightly losing
oh,
my mind.
okay.
And I just took the train down and landed in Hong Kong, met people, found a job, found my feet, and then I dated somebody and stayed for 6 years. So, if you're dating somebody, you're like, all right, I'm going to stay. So I dated somebody 5 of the 6 years I was there, and then it was time to come home.
That's
So,
so funny.
yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't have a lot of dating experience, so I don't know. I wouldn't know. I don't know why. I don't know. That's not.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool for sure. I definitely could understand the pool if that makes sense too. Like,
Yeah.
I'm here. I'm trying to build a life here, or this person's drawing me to this place, so I'll stay.
Right.
Whatever, and then you kind of start doing the other things that is required to maintain your life. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I'm still stuck on like Hong Kong traveling. So then after you went back to DC and you said you started to find your footing, I have a lot of questions, I guess, in regards to, and I don't know if this is something even you cared about while doing it, but it's something I struggle with. So I'm assuming a lot of people struggle with it. Is like the opinions of other people when you're doing things kind of not in the way that most people experience, like what you're supposed to be doing or what they tell you will make you successful.
Yeah.
So I think like I don't know if like your parents were supportive or creative or just kind of were hands off. Like did you have any experience with like feedback of like friends or like I don't know, like culture, like religion, like how did you deal with that while trying to figure out what you really wanted to do?
So, I moved back here. I was probably like late 20s,
Hmm.
maybe 30, I don't know. And, um, went back to getting a day job because I had to make a living, right? And I had to survive.
Yeah.
And had no skill, I have a master's degree and have no confidence and skills and no desire to go take that and catapult it into a career because like why would heck would I ever want to like I don't know I could in DC it could have worked for so
Different.
many nonprofits with that kind of like starting at the floor and working
Yeah.
but like a career in that never so I think the thing is yes I had so many thoughts and so my entire next 20 years was about taking these thoughts that are plaguing me and shifting them so the first thought was I'm going to embarrass my family by being an artist. Where that
Mm,
comes from I don't know. I mean my family is much more like that the parents like professionals and some were in DC and there's like so I had to change that belief, and then the next one was this is really hard. It's going to be hard. It's going to be a struggle. That is a belief. And I had to change that belief. And so I just kept changing every time I would want to take a step. And I'm really tenacious. So if I want a goal, I'm gonna get it. But it's really, yeah, maybe people have opinions out there, but it won't matter if I don't hold them. The problem is that I hold the opinion they hold, otherwise it wouldn't stick to me. So really I just tune out everybody else and like, what are you believing, Valerie? And if you're believing it, then that's why you're stuck. So it's this gentle process of like moving my beliefs over and over and I'm always working with somebody or something. Like I always need some kind of support to help me. And so I just kept moving and moving and moving. And, like I said, the artist way, that was like a catapult. So that was like a container, like a book that I could like hold on to and do methodically. That got me, that was like the first big step. And then I listened to a lot of people. I don't know if you know Abraham Hicks. I'm a big fan of theirs.
I'm gonna
Um,
look. It up.
Yeah,
What?
on YouTube, Abraham Hicks, listen to them a long time. They talk a lot about the vibration of the story you're telling
Mhm.
and what that's bringing back into your reality. And let's see. So I got a day job that let me work 80% and 20% was on my own. And so I did that for a year and started building up my artwork. And then the next year they let me do 70/30. So then I had an extra half a day, like I had a day and a half of my artwork and 3.5 days of day job. And I could still get like benefits and, it's the whole thing about being an American and you need health insurance, right?
That's the
So
tough part about that. Yeah.
yeah. And so I did 60/40 and it took me 5 years. And oh yeah.
I,
So yeah, like listening to them and following them and um really helped me because they constantly teaching you how much your story is leading you into your future, you know and so but all sorts of things, but I was very methodical and slowly and patient because it took me 5 years till I could take the leap and be full time, and that was 2007. So I've been able to do my work full time since then.
that's so awesome. I like that you are also talking about the patience and the build up and the mythology to like how to do it, because yeah, there's so many things that come into play, like you're talking about, like health insurance, dental eye, I don't know, just like 9 to 5, and then just like how do I do this while pursuing what I actually want to do, if there's something else that you actually want to do. Some people, they don't
Hmm.
don't want to, but
Hmm.
others they do. So like figuring that out, and then like you're saying, being patient while doing that, like it's, I don't know, it's extremely difficult. And I'm like, I give you props, because I think like a lot of the time you just want to jump right away. Like you're just like, I don't care, I'm gonna jump out of the airplane with or
Yeah.
without the like parachute,
Yeah.
um and that oftentimes, like, I don't know, like you don't, there's no guarantee in those situations, right? And so I think that's hard too. It's like a lot of us, we just want to like quit and then have things start working right away. Like start
Yeah.
making, I don't know, like $10,000 a month from our art right away.
Yeah.
And like sometimes that does happen, right? It does sometimes happen. Other times it doesn't. So like, yeah, finding out a way that works for you, because each person is also very different in what they need for themselves, is really difficult. Some people are cool living with their parents, and like not having to like pay rent, and they use that as like a way to like do their artistry.
Yeah.
But other people, you're like, actually, I'm paying with my soul. So
Yeah.
I'm paying with my mental health, so I gotta get out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, figuring out what that is for you is like hard too, because it's different. I have a friend. It's like he doesn't have a driver's license. He's like mid 20s. He's just doing his artist stuff. He lives with his parents, and he's fine. He's happy doing that.
Yeah.
Me, I'm like, actually, I might lose my mind.
Yeah.
Like, I
Yeah.
might throw a shoe at someone tomorrow morning or something. So
Right.
yeah, I think it's different for each person, and kind of that give and take, self negotiation, and that's hard. That's really hard
Mhm.
to find that medium. And like you said, it was probably a really big gift for you to be able to have that. Like, I think you said you worked like 80% or something.
Yeah, like when you have a contract and you'd be employed 5 days a week, 100%. It was a big science organization and they let me sign on for 80% of a job.
That's
So
awesome.
I got one day off a week.
That
And then
that's
the next
before
year
that.
was like,
Okay.
yeah. Then the next year was 1.5 days because I was working 70%.
Yeah.
And then the next year was 60, So it was like, and then I was building myself up. But I don't know how I had that patience because I'm not really a patient person, but I knew I was moving towards where I wanted to be. And
Yeah.
that's the only way I knew how.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Being able to see kind of the light at the end of the tunnel, to be like,
yeah.
okay, I'm working towards something that's valuable and meaningful to me.
Yeah.
There's another thing that I think is coming up right now that like it's like when you're a creative person, I think something that I think about all the time is like you want to be your own boss. You know?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you want the freedom to work when you want to work and work how you want to work and find money how you want to make money. Like I don't know, like I don't know if that's something that has set you free or does that feel any kind of way now that you're kind of more in control of that or do you feel in control of it at all?
Um, yeah, I do feel in control of it because again, it's like the visioning, but it's become so second nature to me that I'm sure that it's always coming, that I'm sure that somebody's always going to buy my pieces. I'm sure that, you know, um, I'll be able to like support myself.
Yeah.
Just like the creativity never stops, that I don't even question that. Like I have 10 ideas that like I can't keep up with, right? It's just like burgeoning. And why can't I have the same thing with like
Money.
uh money coming in, So I'm not sure if that answers your question.
No,
I
it
got
does.
off
It does.
that.
It does. It's like I think it fits into like the law of assumption and then like also just I know what you're saying.
So when you say law of assumption, that's Neville Goddard. Do you listen to Neville Goddard?
I've heard clips. I've heard of like YouTube people talking about him. I've
Yeah.
never listened to him directly, but I've like when you see the posts, like but you don't necessarily like listen to all of it. So I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, that kind of makes sense what you're
Yeah.
saying. Heard of it. That's why I said that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Just
haven't
curious.
listened to him. I haven't listened to him like fully. Um, that kind of sounded like it. I was like, okay, like yeah, okay. I did hear that story where he tells this like young man in New York, like the first story, like I heard that of his, like how he started, and that's how he used, like he like was envisioning or like saying like why, well that makes like, so I think yeah that's interesting. And when you say like when you have 10 pieces in mind, like let's say right now,
Hmm.
just out of curiosity, like, do they come to you like when you're like sitting or like when you're doing something or when you're emotional or yeah. Totally.
Um, it I think, I show up at my studio 5 days a week for like 5 to 7 hours, so I kind of am constantly in my work. And so I think they come because I meditate every day. And so there's just so like I went to Art Basel in Miami last week or the week
No,
before. Yeah, yeah, it was so great. Never been, and ran into so many people, knew like 15 people down there, super random, but like people from DC, a lot of DC people were there, and it was like amazing. And then on the plane ride home, because I just soaked in, I probably saw like 2,000 pieces of art in 3 days. It's just like, in the way home, I'm like, I just downloaded like, oh, I want to do that and that and that and that, so I think sometimes it comes in those ways, like after um just consuming so much visually, then it percolates and comes out. But often it happens while I'm working. Like I'm working on this piece and I'm sort of not stuck, but like I'm committed to it, right? So I'm not going to go off and, because they take me like 2 to 3 to 4 months. So once I'm on it, I want to I want to keep going with where it's taking me. But as I'm working on it, I'm getting these other ideas like, oh, next I want to do that. Oh, next I want to do that. You know what I mean? So it's like trying to like, okay, I know you want to run off and go do all that, but like, let's stay the course and work on, as long as you have inspiration and you know what you're doing, let's stay here. Because there's a lot of pieces where they just sit until I get the answer. I have like 2 or 3 other pieces in my studio where I've started and I don't know where I'm going. But as long as I keep getting the information where I'm going, I'm not going to get off of that one to go try. Yeah. So then I just kind of file them away. But yeah, just so many things, so many sculptures I want to make, but they take months and months. So, I have to be patient. Like, maybe in April you can start that one, or maybe in February you can start that one, or something like that.
Do you ever like sketch it out first, or do you write it down, or do you just remember like in your head?
I remember in my head mostly. I have to sketch them out for somebody. I don't carve them,
Okay.
you know.
Yeah.
So I have this great guy. I've been working with him for like 15 years, Howard. And so I sketch them out for him, or I sketch them out because then I shop them around. Like, they take me, 2 to 4 months. So, and they're a lot of money. You know what I mean? So like I need to sometimes find somebody to pay for them. So I'll sketch out a sketch and then try to find somebody
Like a buyer.
to yeah, to buy it. Like, the last big one I did was for a neighborhood, like right downtown. It's 3 blocks from the White House. So there's like an organization that manages that neighborhood. And um, I knew they were looking for sculptures. So I was like, hey, I took one of these ideas that's been sitting there waiting to be realized. Or I just got a grant. The DC government's very generous with artists, very, very generous. So I got a grant and they bought a piece of my work. So then that means I have 2 months that I can take off and work on one of these ideas.
Yeah.
So it's either sketching them out and trying to shop them around to find somebody to pay for it, or selling some work, or getting a grant that I can just spend the time.
Yeah. Do you feel like most of the time it's like individuals, or do you think it's like institutions, or kind of a combination of both?
For my work, because it's large and it's public, it's mostly institutions. It's
Okay.
mostly governments or institutions. Like Microsoft bought one of my pieces. This government or quasi-government, nonprofit that manages a neighborhood in DC. Then, like I said, the DC government. So yeah, it's because they're large. I've very few sold to private individuals, and mostly to like a developer, or who's got a big building and they need something in front of the building. Or yeah, I don't have a connection with like wealthy individuals who want to drop a lot of money on a 10-foot sculpture. They're out there, but I just don't know them.
Yeah.
So
Right, right,
yeah.
right. No, yeah. That's cool. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm like, even with the institutions, it's like, do you approach them, or they approach you like through word of mouth? Like, oh,
Both.
this person's really good. Like, I remember working with her, and then they kind of
Yeah.
give you another contractor, and then like that kind of a weird, like, that weird, like, it's not it's not what you do, it's who you know. Like, kind of
Yeah, it is a lot. I'm very social and I get around and I keep up relationships. So a lot of people now come to me. In the beginning, the first, let's say, like 5, 10 years, I was definitely going out all the time. Um, and now, and again, it was like a story changing. I'm like, I'm tired of trying to do that. And I just like, okay, things are coming to me. And I just did that for a long time. And now things just come to me. So again, it's another thing of changing the story and then moving into it. So now mostly things come to me, you
That's
know.
amazing.
Yeah.
I liked how you talked about kind of. I want to come back to this, but there is something that's popping up, and I just feel like I need to say it. And it's like you said, like something about like you had told yourself this is going to be a struggle, and then you were like, but then I realized that that was a belief that I didn't need to buy into,
Hmm.
and that shift, like I haven't shifted that mentality, like you,
Hmm.
and I would bet that a lot of people haven't been able to, or don't think it's possible to shift that mentality because
Or more importantly, they don't think that that's a belief. They think that's a reality. I think that's the dominant reality people are living in. And it's so deep that people live it and not even seeing that it's just a story that 95% of the art world are believing. I think that's yeah. I think uh you're not only stepping out of your own belief, you're stepping out of the dominant narrative.
yeah,
So and it took me a year of just, and again, I don't do this alone. I work with people who like either intuitives or people who help me. And then I just hold on to the new story until it becomes real. Like
Mm-hmm.
I had to change the story. Like it's easy. Things come to me easily. I'm a full-time artist,
Mm-hmm.
you know. I said that for a year. I'm a full-time artist, making an abundant living. And a year later, it became true. But I literally would stand in it, not just say it, but I'm like, stand up in the middle of somewhere and just be like, this is the same thing. I mean, this is a little off topic, but like with my son, everybody's like, childbirth is so hard. Oh my God, and I was terrified. And then I did hypnosis and just like, this is going to be easy. And I just, for 6 months, just reprogrammed my brain like, this is going to be easy. 2 hours like that in non medicated in a pool, It's like, yeah, it was 2 hours in and out, in like a birthing center, So it's like, again, it's like every facet of, like that's the dominant belief
Mm-hmm.
based on like TV and movies, like this is going to be awful. And it is going to be awful until you change your beliefs. Because if I'd gone into it with the amount of fear that was running through my system, I would have created, I'm sure there's a lot more to it. And I don't want to um, disavow people who have serious medical stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
This is just my beliefs and what has worked for me and what I've done in my life that has like turned things around. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, no. There's definitely things that are unforeseen or happen, and you're like, God knows why those things
Yeah.
happen. Like
Yeah.
for sure, there's mysteries out there that
Yeah.
just, they just crack your skull open to think about.
Yeah.
For sure,
But as much as I'm contributing to it, I'm going to change it. There's other things that I can't obviously control, but
yeah,
as much
yeah.
as I'm contributing to it, I'm going to change it.
Yeah, yeah, and I
So,
think that belief stuck with me because that's where I'm at. Where I always tell myself like, "Oh, this is going to be a struggle. This is going to be a struggle."
mhm.
But you know what's weird, and maybe this is something you can relate to too, is once you actually get into what you're doing, like whether that is a creative thing or doing something like entrepreneurial, which I believe is a form of creativity, because
Yeah.
you're thinking outside the box. It's
Yeah.
not that hard when you're in tune with it and you're doing it. It's hard before you do it. Am I the only one that experiences that where it's like it's that between that, and I think we've been talking between the space of I'm thinking about this idea, but I'm not doing it because I have all these things to do, and then the actual act. So that transitionary period, that I think to me feels like the worst part of it all.
Yeah. Well, it kind of reminds me of like exercise. Like I always feel better after I do it, but the thinking about it and getting there. And I would wonder what is all that resistance in there, between the idea and the actuality of it, knowing that you're going to feel better when you are in that creative flow and you actualize that project that you want to do, or,
Yeah.
and yeah, I don't understand what all that interference is, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
I think you're right though, it's resistance. It's resistance of a lot of things. Fear, resistance, pain, things you're overcoming.
mhm,
Um, because yeah, I think a lot of the times you want, at least for me, buy into the narratives that you were programmed into originally. So you're just like, why? For me, it's like, why do I think that I can be successful at this? Or
mhm,
right, like my mom or my dad or whoever or your aunt or your uncle, it doesn't matter. You just like sit there and you're like going against it, and so that
mhm,
it feels like a spiritual war, if that makes sense, where you're just like,
mhm.
oh, and you're like
Yeah,
moving your hand past that like weird like spiritual mist thing like in Harry Potter. And like you're like going through it, and that's really painful. It's really
yeah,
painful.
yeah,
So I think yeah, it's resistance and it sucks. Like it's not fun. It's not
yeah,
fun, but it's
yeah,
it's nice when you're in the other side of it.
yeah. I agree. I agree.
So yeah, but that's
Yeah.
all the pieces and all the stuff, and now you're in DC, and it sounds like you've made kind of a home basis for now.
I have, and I live and work in an amazing. So I live in DC, but we're on the border of Maryland. So like a mile down the road is Maryland, and there's like a big arts community. So there's a couple hundred people, a lot of warehouses, doing amazing work. So I am part, which is critical to me, of an amazing community of people who are doing this. Like I'm not alone trying to, like, even though I like have my own space, you probably seen it on Instagram, like my warehouse space, but like next door there's all these people, so I just have to pop my head out and say hello, and just know that, because like if you're in an office or like in an organization, you're part of a group, and but doing this work, you're just sort of like out in the atmosphere, like forging your own path. And sometimes I feel like it can be daunting and slightly lonely, but to know that I'm part of this like 200-person strong arts community where um, everybody is trying to make it work. And then, I call, like the other day, I needed a propane tank, and I called down to the glass school, I was like, can I, and they'd lend me their propane tank with some nozzle on it, that kind of thing. Like, how do you do this? How do you do that? We like help each other out. But also I think there's just this recognition, like we're part of a group of people that are forging their own paths. And that is incredibly comforting.
Yeah,
So
I can imagine that it would create that sort of a like vibe. It makes it real. It makes it real. Whereas when
yeah.
you're alone, you're like, it's real, but it doesn't feel real, if that makes sense. Like you haven't merged the two realities. I think that's true for sure. That's kind of, yeah, I can understand that. And I think what I'm hearing you say is like, so it's really important to find an environment where you can have an artistic community and feel supported in the area of art or wherever, whatever you're trying to do, to kind of feel that like energy, like funnel, so that you kind of pushes you. I think of like a school of fish or something, where they're like, it's like that feeling, when they like swim past you and they're like
Mhm.
up. That's what I'm like envisioning. It's like you want that feeling of like gusto to like push
Mhm.
you forward. And
Mhm.
oh, I feel that. I feel that in the air. So I'm gonna like also go that way. And I think that's probably particular too with creative people because we're so open.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
which is kind of hard too. Cause like,
I know. So that's another thing Rick Rubin had said. I think it was his
yeah,
book. It was the thing that makes us so available to be tuned in is also the thing that makes us so sensitive that sometimes it's hard. He was talking specifically about musicians that like, they're so open and receptive to that creative power, but at the same time, then criticism or critiques, like that open receptivity can make you incredibly fragile, and that kind of, yeah.
it's
Um,
it's very true.
it,
That's
yeah. And very sensitive, like, I mean, I'm visual, so I'm incredibly visually sensitive to my surroundings, like hypersensitive.
okay.
And sometimes that, yeah, that kind of sensitivity, sometimes it's hard to like maneuver in different worlds.
Throw you off a little. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like from that's that's really interesting. Like I do think, well, that's why they say you have to like feng shui and all that stuff. That's why they say like it's so important to like set up your space in like a way that works for you.
Yeah.
Um, I need to, but
And
yeah.
my home is like a womb, like a kid, like it's,
Mm, mm,
I go to work, it's like
mm-hmm.
messy, dirty, and then I come home and I slough it off, and it's like my home is like an embrace. I've made it like I'm surrounded by plants and artwork, and like, and it's comfortable and it's cozy, and so like my home is like my place where kind of go in. Like I always think of like, well, everything is feminine, so it's like the womb, like the the place where you can kind of like
rest.
get solace. So
Yeah, regenerate. I think, yeah, it's that's super interesting. For me, I feel like my creativity comes through emotions. So that's like
through
that's
what? Say that again?
emotion.
Oh, okay. Uh-huh.
So like when you said like you see like you're picking up like the visual cues. So I can kind of imagine you like maybe going to like downtown like New York or something, and then you're picking up all these visual sensitivities. For me, it feels like it's this weird like energy that or like emotions that I get off other people or like
Hmm.
in audio, like hearing. And that is what I'm kind of like, you're eating too much. You're just like, you know? So I
Yeah.
don't know if you ever get that kind of overload, like, from whatever, like, it can be inspiring, but it can also feel like an overwhelm, if that makes sense, where you're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
that's enough. Like, I can't,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's why, like, alone time and that, like, regenerative process is probably so important too.
Yeah. For sure. I agree. I agree.
And if
Yeah.
you're not outpouring, that's the other thing is like if you're not creating, I think that's another easy way to become depressed very easily because
Oh, I miss it. Like I love traveling, but when I come, I mean, oh, it was California for a week. I couldn't wait to get back in the studio. Like, yeah, I miss that
yeah.
because I feel so connected in that
Mhm.
space. I feel like I am in sync with that creative flow, and I miss that. I miss it so much. Like I kind of crave it.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I'm with you. I'm with you. And if it's been too long and then you go back into it, you realize, okay, that was what was upsetting to me. Was I wasn't doing what I actually wanted to be doing. There's another belief system. It's interesting. This conversation has become really philosophical very quickly, but I want to address it. It's there's this other belief system too. It's like something like we're talking about it. I'm like envisioning it, and like we're talking so much about like what you want to be doing or what you feel called to be doing or what you are in tune with doing. I guess two things that come up for me. One is like I don't know if you've encountered this, but like some people they kind of when confronted with what you believe and what you're doing and what you're trying to do, they're kind of like, oh, but only like 1% of people like do what they love. Like, why do you think that'll be you? Like,
I don't tell people. I like have very few people I tell these things to. Very few. Why would I like I'm trying to get my legs, my sea legs, right? So why would I like take this timid idea which I know has life in it and
yeah,
then throw it out to non-believers for them to do that, right? I mean, so I keep these things very close to me. And
that's
only when you find like a kindred spirit who understands like an energy, you
like what
know.
you're trying to do. Yeah.
Yeah, and so there's a very few, one of my sisters is an artist. She lives in Oakland, so and she and I have this, and she's also like a 30-year meditator. So she and I understand this
Mhm.
on multiple fronts, right? But yeah,
Yeah. No,
yeah,
I
I don't bring those ideas out to to people unless they're like safe.
and they almost start sinking into that vibration. It's true. It's true. And it's weird because sometimes you can have a connection like this, but like then with not someone like you're super close to because
Yeah,
it's exactly true. And
yeah,
that's actually true what you're saying, and I haven't applied that, but there is a quote I thought of, and it's like the Stoics used to say it like, "Don't shine your spring bloom in the winter," which is like when the flowers are barely coming out of the surface because like they can still be killed by the snow.
yeah,
So like, that concept of like, no, you have to let yourself fully bloom into spring before you like speak about it
yeah.
because the winter will kill the new bloom.
Right,
Oh, that's hard.
right. And so like it's like guarding that, yeah,
That
that,
growth
yeah, yeah,
idea,
and
the sprout, the seed of life.
right.
That's hard. That's hard for me. The second thing I was thinking of is we are talking so much about like calling and like putting it to action and being in tune with that and believing you can, like you are kind of incorporating what you are and what you do in one. I guess another thing to me is like, and I guess we've already addressed this in a lot of ways, but I guess like a lot of this is a weird thing to say, but I feel like a lot of people are in resistance to that, or like don't have that belief system that it like doesn't exist. I don't know. Like, what do you? I guess. What do you think?
Well, I mean, you're clearly, way younger than me. And the fact that it's in your colloquial speech when I was coming up, no, nobody was talking about this. So it is just becoming more and more like, I mean, and that's the other thing is like, it doesn't matter what they're, like, that's like where it has to go back to like, me and my source. That's my ultimate authority. And then I read things like the Artist Way or Rick Rubin or Abraham Hicks because I need my community of people who understand this process, right? So again, like you're saying about the blossom, like not bringing it out to the winter, because like I don't need to convince anyone, I'm just going to be the proof of it, right? Like
That's awesome. That's awesome. I do you. I out of curiosity, do you have one or two kids?
I have one felt like I can do this well. Two felt like no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Two felt like that's gonna be real. Because I was married, he and I are very close, but we're not married anymore, but he's an artist too. He's an oil painter.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
So we were like two artists, like, and back then, not, you know, I was still trying to get my head around all of this, that my son's 14 and a half. So yeah, yeah, just one. That's a long answer to say just one. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I was curious because I was like, I wonder in a lot of ways, like this is something maybe that we cannot answer fully, but like it's interesting because probably having an artist as a parent and an artist who's able to provide as a parent is probably such a weird, like, I don't know, or maybe not a weird dynamic that he's like going through. Like he's like, well, parents
I
do.
don't know if I don't think he cares. I
Okay.
don't think, I think it doesn't, he's not interested. I mean, 12 years, his first 12 years, he was taken to galleries and museums and everything. Like our whole community is artists, and I think
Yeah.
now he's no more. And he's like science, math, robots. He's like, I think the way it's going to affect him when he's older, though, is he will have that entrepreneurial spirit, because we have been, I don't like the word hustling, but we've been, we both, constantly making things work out of a frame. And I think the creativity that he's witnessed in his two parents will inevitably give him like a much more expansive mindset. But I think he is going to go in a different direction.
Yeah, and that's what's beautiful about
Yeah.
this world is like, and I like that you also have allowed him to go in a different direction. A lot of people punish their children for expressing themselves for who they are instead of who they want them to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's awesome too because yeah, but I'm sure it's kind of a trip. I'm sure eventually he'll think like maybe he'll be like 30 or 40, he'll be like, my parents were full-time artists. What? Like
How does that work? Yeah. Yeah.
wait, what
Maybe.
happened? Like,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
especially when talking to other people or realizing like how other people grew up or like the beliefs that they were given or like how different people live and you interact enough and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, was it normal? You were, you know?
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. But no, yeah, I think I'm like, we spoke more about the belief system than the actual art. And like, I should ask
Uh-huh.
more questions about your pieces.
Uh,
Is so okay. Let me think. My first question that came to mind was like, have you had like a favorite piece that you've done, or is it just kind of like each phase of your life turns into a different piece? Um, or I have another question too. I guess you said you draw things and then you find people to like to buy them or commission to. Or
mhm.
I guess do you ever just Hmm. So a lot of the times what I'm hearing is you make them first and then you do them. Or does someone come to you, like an institution, and say, "Oh, we need this commissioned," and then you kind of go?
Well, like, like I said, I only do like 2 or 3 projects a year because it takes so long. So like Microsoft came to me and they're like, we want a sculpture. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, look at the space, because I got to feel the space. And then I'm like, here you go. This is what I want to do. And they're like, they have to send it through a whole committee. And they're like, but it always happens. They're always like, yes. Anytime that process happens, nobody questions me. They're just like, yes. But it still has to go through like a long process. So yeah, so some people come to me and say, we want one of your sculptures, and then I either pull out something that I've been wanting to make, but if it doesn't feel like it syncs, I mean, it really has to harmonize with this. So if I'm like, um I have something that I want to make and it doesn't fit, then I just sit down and, like, again, it's a meditative process, and I just try to divine what wants to be born there. And I just tune in. And so it's like, I look at the space, I feel it, and then I just spend like 2 or 3 weeks trying to like birth what is wanting to be in that space. So, um, like, what's in me want to articulate here.
Mm-hmm.
And so and it's, you can see a progression of all my pieces, like they're all building on one another. But yeah, so yeah.
That's awesome. So
Yeah,
walls, you do walls, right? Or just structure?
I do 2D too. I started my first like 10 years was doing walls, and I don't have favorite pieces, like whatever I'm working on, because it's so fresh and alive. And then once I'm done, I kind of forget about them, so it's usually, but I did do this one. I need to take some photos because I'm trying to Instagram every Tuesday, and it's hard to come up with new content, but there's one piece I did that's 15 foot by 9 feet, and it's these domes coming off of the wall, which are like colorful domes. And the whole background is like 15 shades of white. And I do all this, like, it's really like being in the ether, like just
Really want to like check it out right now. I'm
all
like
these
trying to go.
all these shapes and sizes. Anyway, I've never really done a good promotion of that one, and I think I probably finished it 2 years ago. But that is probably my favorite because the white background is like so meditative to me. It's like being in another zone.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's that's
So
awesome.
I'm gonna try to go out maybe Monday or Tuesday and get some good photos of it. Yeah.
Isn't that funny that like artistry, so much of it is marketing too?
A lot, yeah. I mean, it's a lot. It's the business side, it's the marketing, it's the showing up, it's being able to present, and talk about your idea. Verbally articulate your ideas is not an easy thing if you think in visual and pictures, right? So, yeah, I mean, so much of it is having all these skill sets, like interacting with people and explaining yourself, and um, yeah,
Yeah,
it's a lot.
yeah, yeah, I'd agree to that. I think, and it's difficult. It's difficult to know. I think too sometimes, or at least for me, where your creativity is and how it differentiates you, and like where your gifts and skill sets are. But I think that's cool, and I think like yes, as artists, like if you want to make it in the 21st century, social media is such a big part of it, and it's so like you're saying, like I have to post on Tuesdays, and it's true. Like it's such an incorporative thing act, um, and I don't know. Yeah, I think it's a necessity. Like
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I would love to have like people do it for me.
event,
But
yeah, it'd be
yeah,
cool.
maybe one
Yeah,
day, like, make enough that I can hire a marketing team. But for now, it's me
or a
going
marketing
out there.
person.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
it's true. Or just like social media person, or just like different areas. where you're
Yeah.
like, that takes so much of my energy or in time or whatever, or someone could be better than you at that, you know, and then you
Yeah.
delegate that specific thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I guess is we should probably wrap it up. But I'm like thinking, I'm like, is there? Let's see. I'll link. I put my like first YouTube thing and I linked everything below. So I'll link that, your Instagram,
Okay.
all your creative things. And I guess two more questions. One is, and I think you kind of already answered this too, but like, is there any upcoming projects that you can talk about that you're excited to work on? And two is like, um, if you were to give one piece of advice for someone trying to figure it out, like, what would that be?
So, yes, I'm working on one piece right now that's like this stacked rock piece that I started 4 years ago and then put it aside. And now, and like I said, because of the grant and DC buying a piece of my work, I'm able to like take 3 months off and just really work on. So I'm finishing up that one. I hope to have it done in a couple of weeks, but it's just these like these stacked rocks, and I don't know where it's going. I don't know what it's going to do, but I'm hoping it kind of congeals and comes together. I just keep working and hoping like it clicks, but I'm just like showing up, doing what's in front of me, and it's like all these little pieces that go together. So whether or not they actually go together in the end is a mystery. So that's what I'm working on now. And then advice, gosh. I mean, not to be a proselytizer, but I just and everybody talks about this, but there's no substitute for having a meditation practice, like because there's so much craziness going on out there, and if I keep tuning in to the brutality, and I mean, and there's beauty in everything, but right now I'm really just so upset with certain things out in the world,
Oh,
and we're involved with as Americans. And um you know, and it causes me great anxiety, and then I have to just go back and just remember. Oh, I'll end with this quote, which is this Leonard Cohen quote. He said, become the ocean. You need to become the ocean, otherwise you'll be seasick every day. And meditation reminds me of the vastness of who we are. And I don't want to be the seasick little personality Valerie, like blah, 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 blah. I need to be the greater, tuned in to a deeper knowing than my little human self. So that would be, I mean, it's helped me in every aspect of my life. And yeah, that would be the one piece of advice. Yeah.
I think that's very true. It's like that self-regulation is key to controlling your emotions so you can control your life.
Yeah.
Because if your emotions control you and everything that you do, you can't even do the things that you want to do, like
Yeah.
art.
And you're, whereas if you're the vastness of the ocean, as all of that's going on, you have a deeper, like all this, a deeper, broader perspective. So
Exactly, exactly. No matter what happens or who it's coming from, a close person, a boss, whatever, whoever spewing whatever that upsets you or throws
mhm.
you off, yeah, exactly. Coming back to that, like, okay, like, what is it that I believe? What is it that I want? What is it that I want to do? Am I gonna allow this to affect my day to day or that? There's a Jim Rohn. Have you heard Jim Rohn quote?
Mm-mm.
There's a Jim Rohn quote, and he's like, my first piece of advice, his is more about like financial freedom, but he has this quote about a coffee cup, and it's basically like my first piece of advice, he says, is like carry around your coffee, and what happens if like you get strychnine in your coffee and you drink the coffee, like you get poisoned and die. But if like you carry around your coffee and then like someone pours in like I don't know water or more coffee or something else, like It doesn't matter if it's your best friend or your enemy that poured in the strychnine or the more coffee or the vanilla or whatever. He's like, if you drink the strychnine, you'll die. And so he's like, protect your coffee, protect what
Mm.
goes into your coffee.
Oh, that's good
Yeah, so
analogy.
I thought about what you said because it's true. Because then it's like if you're ingesting that poison, and
Yeah,
that's what he's talking about is like protecting your coffee cup so
yeah,
nothing comes in it that you don't want in it.
yeah,
That meditative practice, I think you're right, allows that regulation and like depersonalization and self-regulation to allow you to
yeah,
be like, wait, do I want to take this, even if it is real or if it's just a truth, like but still, like, do I want to ingest it? Do I want to make it central to what I'm focusing on at this moment? Yeah,
yeah,
it's true.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
true. I love Jim Ron. He's one of like what you're saying, like those people where you're just like they talk and you're just like, I don't know. Exactly. I'll read that book. And it was awesome talking to you.
Yeah, likewise. I'm glad it finally worked out. I know
I know. I
we both
know. I
I guess ours
know.
felt so.
That's the hardest part actually about like doing this and like starting
Mhm,
this podcast is actually scheduling. Like
mhm.
it's not any of the other things. Like you would think it'd be like editing or like nervousness, but it's actually just scheduling. That's the
Yeah,
hardest. Like
yeah,
finding a time where both of you have free time, especially if you're on different schedules.
right.
So I'm like, okay, interesting business lesson. Scheduling.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Scheduling is hard.
Also,
Thank you for talking to me
yeah, it's great. Great.
this rest of your evening, and I
You
hope
too.
whatever you're working on, you know, I just, I don't know, I'm sending all my good energy into it and
Right.
just, yeah, I'm so excited. I can feel your energy coming off of the Miami um, art base,
Yeah,
if that makes
it was
sense. You can literally
amazing.
feel it coming off of you, like that energetic spirit, the
Yeah,
creativity, like it feels like a noise almost where it's like, okay, yeah, like I can feel how like, vibrant you're kind of picking up. So
yeah,
um
it was amazing. Yeah.
I know I'm so jealous. I was like seeing it on Instagram. I was like, oh. I gotta be like, I am in Miami Art Basel. I am in I gotta start going outside and doing it. I love this work. I love talking to people at the Miami Art Basel.
Right. You can get a press pass, and
I
that'll
want to
get
do
you in a lot
that.
of places free. Yeah. Somehow hooking up, getting a press pass, through some small organization, then you get all the tickets for free.
Honey, that is a great idea. I'm gonna be like,
You got a year to work on that.
be like, maybe this was the reason we met today. Like, a
Yeah,
great
yeah,
idea. And creatives are attracted to other creatives. I don't care what people say. You
yeah,
always find a way to meet.
yeah,
You always,
sure,
you always do that ET thing where you're like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
how are you? So okay, awesome. I definitely, um, yeah, I have a lot to think about and
Mhm,
meditate on, and
mhm.
yeah, I'm good.
And check out the artist way.
I will. I will.
Yeah,
I will. Okay.
yeah.
Well, it's
All
great
right.
talking to you.
All right. Take care.